Three leaders, one signature, and a single sentence that may have just redrawn the security map of an entire region. In the holiest city in all of Islam, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Turkiye have agreed to something that would have sounded almost unthinkable a few years ago. From this day forward, threaten one of them. And you are threatening all three. A nuclear-capable nation, one of the world's great energy powers, and the second strongest military inside NATO, now bound together by a single promise. But here's what most of the headlines are skipping over. Buried inside this agreement is one implication so significant that strategists around the world are quietly recalculating who really holds power in this part of the world. I'll get to that exact detail near the end, and once you hear it, this entire story looks different. So stay with me, because over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through what was signed, why the location was chosen so carefully, and the one question nobody has been able to answer yet. Let's start with what actually happened, because the facts alone are striking. On Friday, inside the Al Safa Palace in Makkah, at a summit officially titled the Makkah Al-Mukarramah Summit for Joint Defense, three men put pen to paper. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif of Pakistan, Saudi Crown Prince and Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman, and Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The document is called the Makkah Joint Defense Agreement, and it was announced in a coordinated joint statement released by both Pakistan's Foreign Office and Saudi Arabia's official press agency. That coordination is your first clue about how deliberate all of this was. And at the core of the pact sits one line that changes everything. The agreement states that any armed action against any one of the three states will be treated as an action against them all. If that sounds familiar, it's the same collective defense principle that anchors NATO, where an assault on a single member is considered an assault on every member. Except here, three Muslim-majority nations have built that framework among themselves, on their own terms, without waiting for anyone else's permission. And it doesn't stop at defense. The statement also commits the three countries to strengthening every aspect of their defense cooperation, training, technology, coordination, the whole architecture fused into one. That's the mechanism, but the mechanism is only powerful because of who's standing behind it, and that's where the location comes in. Because this could have been signed anywhere. It was signed in Makkah, and that was no accident. Sealing an agreement like this in the holiest site in Islam loads it with symbolic weight that a conference hall in any capital simply couldn't match. The three governments deliberately wrapped the pact in the language of brotherhood, faith, and Islamic solidarity, describing it as rooted in long-standing historical ties and shared strategic interests. The Pakistani delegation even performed Umrah at the Holy Kaaba on the morning of the signing. This was engineered to feel less like a transaction between governments and more like a covenant between nations. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif captured that tone precisely, calling it a historic pact and a shield of peace for generations to come. Hold on to that phrase, shield of peace, because by the end of this video, you'll be able to decide for yourself whether that's what it truly is. Now, here's where it gets genuinely fascinating, because when you look at what each of these three nations actually brings to the table, you understand why the entire world is paying attention. Start with Turkiye, NATO-grade military strength, and one of the fastest-growing defense manufacturing sectors on the planet, exporting drones and hardware across the globe. Add Saudi Arabia, some of the most important energy reserves on Earth, the deep financial power to fund cutting-edge technology, and custodianship of Islam's holiest sites. And then there's Pakistan, the only nuclear-capable nation in the entire Muslim world, with a large, experienced military and a serious homegrown defense industry. As one strategic affairs expert put it, Pakistan and Turkey bring powerful defense industries to the partnership, while Saudi Arabia contributes major technological investment. Manpower, money, and machinery stitched into a single framework, which raises the question absolutely everyone is now asking. Is this the birth of a new power bloc? This is the heart of the debate. So pay close attention to how carefully the answer has been managed. Officials from all three nations have gone out of their way to insist the pact is defensive, not offensive. A senior Saudi official stated plainly that the agreement does not represent an effort to build a military axis or a sectarian bloc, that it is not tied to any nuclear ambitions or an arms race, and that it's focused instead on building sustainable, self-reliant capabilities. He went further, saying it poses no threat to any country in the region, doesn't escalate tensions between any two states, and doesn't replace any existing agreements. The official word, in other words, is deterrence, the idea that standing together makes any would-be adversary think twice. So let me put the question to you directly right now before we go deeper. Do you believe this is a genuine shield of peace, or is that simply the language every alliance in history has used? Tell me in the comments. I read them, and this is one I really want to hear your side on. To judge it fairly, though, you have to rewind, because this pact didn't come from nowhere. It's actually the payoff of years of quiet groundwork. Back in September of last year, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia had already signed a strategic mutual defense agreement in Riyadh, pledging that aggression against one would count as aggression against both. According to Pakistani officials, the broader framework was hammered out over roughly 10 months of talks. And Turkey had been signaling for months that it wanted in, openly favoring a wider, more inclusive platform for cooperation and stability. The practical ties were already deep. Pakistan has trained Saudi forces for decades. Turkey and Pakistan have exchanged warships and training aircraft. In 2023, Riyadh agreed to buy Turkish drones in what Ankara called its largest defense export deal ever. And earlier this year, Saudi Arabia announced it had received a military contingent and fighter jets from Pakistan to help bolster the kingdom's security. So this agreement didn't create these relationships, it locked years of them into one binding structure. But timing is everything, and the timing here is no coincidence at all. This pact lands in the middle of serious strain across the wider region, with rising tensions rattling energy routes and shipping lanes. And all three countries have deliberately cast themselves as stabilizers rather than agitators. Pakistan has worked to mediate the tensions involving Iran. Turkey has played a diplomatic role in efforts to calm the situation in Gaza. Together with Egypt, these nations have been deeply involved in trying to contain the broader regional upheaval. There's a maritime dimension too, and it's one you shouldn't overlook. A truce dating back to 2022 between Riyadh and the Houthis in Yemen has broken down, with threats issued against shipping and claims of vessels being targeted in the Red Sea. Pakistan condemned those threats and warned it reserves the right to defend its own maritime interests. And just last week, Saudi Arabia unveiled plans for a multinational maritime coalition to protect. In other words, this defense pact is one piece of a much larger security puzzle snapping into place across the region. All of which finally brings us to the questions no one can answer yet, including the one I promised you at the very start. And this is the detail that reframes the entire story. Think back to what makes Pakistan unique in this group. It is the only nuclear-capable member. So the question strategists around the world are now quietly asking, is this, by binding a nuclear-capable state into a mutual defense framework, does this pact effectively extend some form of protective umbrella over its partners? Officials insist it has nothing to do with nuclear ambitions, but insisting a thing isn't about something is not the same as that thing having no effect at all. And that's just the beginning of the unknowns. How far does collective defense actually stretch in practice? Which threats trigger it and which quietly don't? And crucially, how will the region's other major players, from India to Iran and beyond, read and respond to this new alignment? Not everyone is applauding. Reaction has been mixed, with cautionary voices already arguing it will take far more than one signature to deliver lasting security. None of these answers appear in the public statements, which means the real weight of this agreement won't be measured in today's headlines. It'll be measured in the moves that follow over the coming months. So here's where it all lands. Whether you see it as a shield of peace or the first stone of a new alignment, one fact is beyond dispute. Three heavyweight nations have chosen to tie their fates together in a way that will ripple far beyond their own borders. It's a signal of a shifting order, one where major Muslim majority powers are increasingly building their own security frameworks on their own terms instead of relying on outside guarantees. That is a genuinely historic shift, and it is going to shape this region for years. So now I'll hand it back to you. Shield of peace or something bigger? Drop your verdict below. And if this breakdown helped you see the full picture behind the headline, subscribe, because I go this deep on the biggest stories in world affairs every single week, and the next one is just as important. I'll see you there. To support us, subscribe to our channel.